in 1926, there were still, although not many, there were still founders who had moved to the area that long ago. That's pretty amazing in my mind.
It really is. So, you got some special plans? Do you have a big shindig, a huge cake at the Rice County Fair or something?
All of those, actually. In doing our research, because that's one of the many things we do, in doing our research, we found that the earliest meeting, the very first official meeting to form a historical society was on March 19th, 1926, and then the Articles of Incorporation were officially signed on November 10th, 1926. So this year we're going to use those same dates. Our kickoff event is going to be on March 19th, which is a Saturday, and our wrap-up event is going to be on Thursday, November 10th. And we're doing all kinds of things over that time period, still working on some of the details of that. But one of them is our kickoff, which is very exciting. We're partnering with Steve McDonough over at the Village Theater, and we're going to do a 1920s era movie showing. The movies at that time period were really fun in that they did a newsreel before movies. In fact, they did those newsreels up through the 50s and 60s. This would be traditionally sound bites or small pieces of worldwide news. We're instead going to do the same sort of thing, only with Rice County home movies. Everything from taking a peek perhaps down into some of the Fleckenstein, some of the through the caves and that sort of thing during that time period. But some of the best images that we have on film are of events that we're going over at the grandstand. Racing with those old cigarette-shaped cars, car crashes, demolition derby-like things from the 20s and the 30s.
They took films of that.
They did. They did. It's really fabulous here in Faribault. So at any rate, so we're going to start with that, and then we're also going to show a movie of that time period. And actually, that's one of our events we hope to do all year long, is actually show old movies on the big screen. Which is really great, and Steve's been really wonderful about that. We're also, of course, doing our June fundraising event. We'll be at the fair, absolutely. In fact, anybody who's out there planning on being at the fair, if you're turning 90 this year, come on into the museum. We'll doing a birthday cake for the museum's 90th and anybody else who happens to be turning 90, or anybody else for that matter. But we're talking about of course, we're doing the flea markets, but we're also doing a history 5K walk, so that should be kind of fun. And then all the programs, of course, were lectures and everything from a tour of the St. Martin Brickyard, which is actually over by St. John's. We've got somebody who's going to be talking about the history of Lonsdale and so much more.
Sure, we'll touch on that, but I have to take a market update here. Our opening market report, a service of your KDHL Agri Boosters, then we'll continue our conversation with... Certainly appreciate that, John. Again, your opening market report is a service of your KDHL Agri Boosters. They include Paul Rognus and Prairie Brand Seed. And Ag Power Enterprises, your John Deere dealer. Locations located in Owatonna, Hollandale, Belle Plaine, Osage, and Northwood, Iowa. Susan Garwood is the Executive Director of the Rice County Historical Society. That is your title, right, Susan?
That is.
And she is with me this morning on our AM Minnesota program. They're celebrating their 90th birthday this year. Yesterday would have been my mom's 93rd birthday.
Oh, neat.
Would have been. So, she's no longer with us. But when I think about that, she was born in 1923. So the Rice County Historical Society was born 3 years after my mom.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's wonderful. We've been, when we first got started, it was the Old Settlers Association of Rice County and the DAR that got together and thought we really need to be intentional about making sure to record Rice County's history. We were initially in the assessor's office at the old courthouse, the one that was before it burned down, before it was struck by lightning. And we were there from 26 until 1930, and then the Buckham Library was built, and we were given a room in the upper level of the library, and so we moved there from 1930 until 1978, when we officially moved out of the library and moved into our current location. So, yeah, to think about the fact that we were started before the Buckham Library was built.
Isn't that something? So will this include some tours of historical buildings throughout the county? Because it is the Rice County Historical Society.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, absolutely. In fact, we are hoping to work with our other area historical societies. Northfield, Lonsdale, and Morristown all have historical societies, so we want to help promote their work as well as our own.
And they're thriving too. They're very good historical societies.
Absolutely. We're really lucky. You know, we're hoping to get tours of other landmark and historic locations, not only here within Faribault, as you said, but whole county. We know that Steve Vosepka, who is one of the lead members over at Lonsdale, is going to be doing a program for us. And absolutely, so whole county, because that's part of that story.
So does every county have a historical society in Minnesota? Do you know?
Yes, they do. Not all of them are run by professional staff. Not all of them are open all year long. On the other hand, some of them have 12 and 15 staff members and are open 7 days a week. So it's the whole gamut. But yes, every county has at least one historical society.
Well, North Johnson was on this show yesterday,
the
Director of Community Marketing and for the city of Faribault, and he was telling me that they, of course, did this survey and found that most people here in Faribault believe that the thing that we need to keep in mind in our 2040 visioning is that historical downtown district and preserve the historical significance of our downtown. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the downtown, and I've been so impressed. I've been here for 12 and a half years, and what's really struck me over that time period is how Faribault continues to invest in itself. The downtown, the business owners, the work that's been done to preserve and restore those buildings is just, every time I go downtown, I'm just struck by how beautiful the community is. You know, there are over 1,500 national landmark buildings in the state of Minnesota. Rice County has 75, roughly, of those. The city of Faribault has 22 national landmark buildings downtown alone. The only other community that has more is the city of St. Paul. That speaks a great deal about the history here.
Yeah, you were just talking about the downtown buildings. You had Shattuck and all that. I think it's 28 total, isn't it, in Faribault? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah. It's huge. All the stone houses, when you think about it, yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful community. Right. And a community that celebrates its history. That's exciting, too.
So would a majority of the others, you said 70-some in the county, be in Northfield, or?
Actually, there are more here in Faribault than there are in Northfield, but there's Northfield. There are the Veblen Farmstead, which is over near Nerstrand. There are some throughout the county. In fact, if you go onto our website, anybody, we're at www.rchistory.org. Up at the top, there's a circle button, and right next to it says National Landmark Sites of Rice County. And that links over to the Rice County offices, the GIS office, and a website that features Rice County's historic buildings.
Now, before we took the break, you were telling us about some of the events going on, and I had to interrupt you to go to the break.
That's all right. That's all right. It's just going to be all kinds of programs that we're doing this year, both at the museum, downtown Faribault, and then in other locations throughout the county. And you were talking off air, you were talking a little bit about what kinds of sounds and music and so on from the 20s, and we're definitely celebrating our beginning, but we've been around for 90 years, and so when I talked about the movies, I just want to say we're starting with a 20s era movie, but we hope to do it more than just the one time, and we'll do 1930s, 40s, 50s era movies, not just sticking with our beginning, but celebrating the whole 90 years.
So we'd be going from silent films.
Absolutely. Yep. Although Al Jolson's movie was in, or Jazz Singer, was 1927, and that was the first talkie. So, but yes, our first movie. That's.
Think you might play that?
Well, probably not that one.
Oh.
But we're working on the rights with the film company. You know how
Sure.
that works.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so everything from Charlie Chaplin to Buster Keaton to Clara Bow, those are all iconic movie actors from that early time.
Boy, you can say that again. In fact, I like to watch the Classic Movie Channel.
Great movie.
In fact, I watch that more than probably any other channel, you know, other than sports, and it may be a toss-up there, because I love the old movies.
Yeah, they're really fabulous, you know. The reason we don't want to stop in the 20s is because so many incredible movies were made afterwards. You know, State Fair, the musical, The Quiet Man with John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. We want to make sure that we don't miss out on other opportunities. But again, those are more the fun, bringing Hollywood's history in a way to life. And we want to also make sure to focus in on Rice County history.
Oh, of course, because we're celebrating 90 years, Rice County Historical Society, 90 years young. Before I forget, Tuesday you have a special program coming up, the Women of Rice County. It looks like it'll be very interesting.
Thank you. Yes, that's actually going to be at the museum. We're at 1814 Northwest 2nd Avenue, right across from the Faribault Foods building and over the river from the Faribault Woolen Mill. And that's actually going to be at the museum in our newly established Carlander Family Room. It's a meeting room in our addition. And I'm actually the presenter and talking about the way women in Rice County have shaped the county itself, from the earliest women who actually owned lands. Oftentimes we think about those homesteaders, we immediately assume that they're traditional family, male head of the household, and women having a very important role, but always not being the landowners. But in Rice County, there were a lot of women in those very earliest days who actually were the land title owners. And they went in 1880, the city of Faribault alone had more than 10 women who were running businesses in downtown Faribault.
Isn't that something?
Isn't that something? So at any rate, from teachers to medical professionals to so on. So I'm limiting it to we're going from 1850 to 1920, because my very first time I did this or was working on developing this, we started to get into people whose stories were still being written, and I thought I better stop at this point in time, and maybe in some point in time in the future we'll bring it to the present, but stopping in 1920.
Well, that's plenty of time to cover.
Well, it is. It really is. There's oodles of stories and so on.
I'll bet. I see a picture that was on your website of my aunt was a telephone operator, and it brought back some memories of her talking about her days as a telephone operator, where they all sat at the switchboards.
Yeah, well, right, exactly. So you didn't make a phone call and dial numbers and just automatically, and you'd talk to somebody. You want to talk to, and then you'd give the number, and then that switchboard operator would move the wires and so on. That's very cool that your aunt had that experience.
To plug you in to whoever you were calling.
Absolutely.
So you were always on a party line back then, right?
Right, as I understand.
Heck, when I was a kid, I remember we had party lines when I was young.
And so then you'll know better than I did, when the phone rang, did it have a certain ring so that you knew it was your phone call versus somebody else on the party line?
Oh, I guess I didn't even remember that.
Yeah, as I understand that's again where the switchboard operators would come into play. They would, if it was your number, they would connect up, and you're right, a party line meaning that there could be 4 or 5 people on the same telephone ring, and everybody could hear the phone ring, but each home had its own ring on that party line, and you'd learn which one it was. That didn't prevent, by the way, somebody from picking up the phone in another house and hearing your conversation.
Yeah. That happened more than once.
As I understand, pretty much universally true. Yeah.
So we've come a long way since those days, haven't we?
We sure have. I noticed you and I both have our cell phones out, so yeah, much different world.
Yeah, I said on the website post plugging today's program that I can only imagine what people who were back in the 1920s living, if they came back in a time machine here, would think.
Oh, truly, I think about how the roads would have changed, the cars, the speed that the cars. I mean, I remember seeing one sign on a bridge, a picture of a bridge in Rice County, and zooming it in, trying to figure out and it was a speed limit sign over the bridge in Northfield, and the speed limit was 15 miles an hour, and that was fast. That was they would have been crazy fast to go that.
So in your research, I don't want you to necessarily let the cat out of the bag, because obviously you want people to come to your event on Tuesday, January 19th, 7 in the evening, over at the Historical Society Museum. By the way, the program is $2 for non-members, free for members. Another incentive to become a member. What does it cost to be a member?
$20 for a senior individual, $30 for a regular individual, $35 for a family.
How do you define a senior?
55 or older.
Wow, I'm in that group now. I'm a senior.
Well, congratulations.
Well, I don't know if I need to be well, maybe I do. I've
sure.
Survived this long. Anyway, Tuesday, January 19th. But is there one surprising fact, some surprising tidbit of a woman in Rice County that you're going to share with folks, and obviously more detail than you will here?
Surprising fact. Each story has its own strength.
I mean, I seem to recall that MSAD had a letter from Helen Keller.
Oh yeah,
years ago.
And I don't cover that one in my presentation because she wasn't a Rice County person.
Right.
All kinds of amazing people have visited Faribault. So absolutely, Alexander Graham Bell, Frederick Douglass, Mark Twain. Lots of folks have come to Faribault, not just passing through, but actually staying for a period of time. But my program is really focused in on the Rice County born folks, or Rice County people who spent much of their lives here. One thing, there are some great stories. There's talking about business owners again. There's we found a photograph of an early business, and then another photograph a little bit later where one of the employees in the first business went on to form her own business. So I won't share exactly which that business is specifically. Another neat story that we do sort of talk about is the Laura Baker story. That's a Northfield story, but again, as you say, we're Rice County. The Laura Baker story, she actually started here as an employee at the Faribault Regional Center, and much of her experience that she learned here influenced and shaped the kind of school that she developed in Northfield that still is running and thriving today.
Isn't that awesome? And of course, the Faribault Regional Center obviously is no more.
Right. No more as a single institution yet, of course. So many important changes with the group homes. And one of the biggest challenges, and I know that it still happens at the deaf and the blind school, but the little ones who are having to go so far from home to get the education that they needed at the regional center, that was quite literally children who would be removed from the home or surrendered or brought to the regional center seeking assistance a long way away from mom and dad. And the neat thing about now, where they're in group homes and other kinds of settings, is that they're near family, and that has so improved the lives of the clients who are being served with that. But not to diminish, though, the Faribault Regional Center, it's one of the neat things about having a job where you get to look in the past, is that they were really innovative with their programming, the kinds of things that they did, teaching. Prior to the Faribault Regional Center, people were warehoused, children brought to a place, and the focus was on keeping them alive, not enriching their lives. And here in Faribault, at the turn of the century, they were very much focused on how can we improve the lives of these children and adults, teaching them a craft, providing opportunities for them to dance, working the farm, and so on. So,
of course, a lot of changes in that area too, because wasn't the first name of the institution, feeble-minded or something like
It
that?
was actually the home for the idiots, imbeciles, and now those words have a lot of emotional meaning today, but they're actually a medical term. It refers to that idiots have an IQ up to a certain point. Imbeciles have, so it's like 0 to 50. Forgive me for if I get these wrong, but idiots, it's an actual medical term referring to your IQ range. Again, highly charged words today, but at that time they weren't inflammatory, they were medical. So if you were an idiot, that meant that you had an IQ of 50 or less. An imbecile was 50 to 75. A moron there's another highly charged word. So well, and it's important to remember when looking at the past.
Yes,
that's exactly it. We apply so much of today's culture, naturally. We apply today's culture, morals, expectations on the past. And that's one of the greatest challenges, is to try and step out of your own world into theirs and see what was the norm, what was the expectation, and really even what did the word mean. We don't even have to go so highly charged or personal. The gay 90s. Gay meant happy.
Yes.
A word that has changed dramatically in its meaning. So anyway, that's a part of what we do, as we try and help people step out of today into the past.
The roaring 20s?
Exactly. Exactly.
What did they call the 30s?
The jazz age.
Great Depression?
Yep.
I'm sure some of your look back, a significant amount of it may be in that particular time frame, because that, when you think about any single event in the 20th century that really shaped the rest of the century, it was the Great Depression.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there are, and not just a single time period. You know, we think about the Great Depression as being the stock market crash of '29, but it wasn't until the war and the industry boom that people were really finally coming out of that time period. I've seen, the whole WPA projects, those were a part of
viaduct built by that?
Exactly, the viaduct. Well, these are Roosevelt-era initiatives to deal with the deep poverty and unemployment. And so now there's other kinds of financial, there's unemployment and other kinds of things, and at that time there wasn't. And so the federal government would hire people to work on projects. The CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, these are people who were going around taking care of the rivers and natural environments. You're right, the viaduct was built by the WPA, so people who were otherwise unemployed but highly skilled, working on that. The courthouse was a WPA project.
I have to tell you, Susan, this is my own opinion. I kind of like that approach.
It's a neat one, actually.
You know, for those who are able, obviously, those that aren't able-bodied, I can see, the assistance. But on the other side of things, it was really a cool approach. These things needed to be built, right?
Absolutely.
It would have been more costly to hire some firm to do it.
Right.
So you hire people.
Well, and they still would hire, people got paid a livable wage, so it was, it wasn't like it was any less expense to the state, but it was, or on the project, I should say, actually, but the money was coming from the federal government.
Right.
So it was benefiting not only the individual workers, but the county itself had a huge benefit. Absolutely. But not only were WPA folks ones who were working construction, there were writers. There are some interesting histories that we have in our collection that would be researched and written up at that time period. They did surveys, they did all kinds of things. On the flip side, of course, that was also, they had the poor farm, and they had, that was a time where if you had only one person in the household, always the male, could work. The female was not allowed to work. In fact, my grandma, who got married in 1931, lied because her husband was a doctor or a medical student, wasn't working yet. Once she got married, she would have had to quit her job because that was a time period where you could only have one income.
She didn't talk about her wedding.
She didn't let anybody know she was married until he graduated from medical school 9 months after that time period. So
that's another area where we've come a long way.
Absolutely.
Well, women's right to vote.
Right, would have, yep, absolutely. All kinds of things, women's labor laws, the fact that we have a weekend is thanks to the unions.
Yeah. Children's labor laws too.
Exactly.
Have all come about since the start of the Rice County Historical Society.
Many of them, absolutely, yep.
That's just amazing to me. So, make sure you get on out, folks, for this Women of Rice County program on Tuesday, January 19th. That's this coming Tuesday.
That's correct.
7 in the evening. $2 for non-members, absolutely free if you're a member of the Rice County Historical Society, and that's located at 1814 Northwest 2nd Avenue. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, if you're not a member yet, you can join that night. So happy to, always looking for a part of our 90th is we'd love to add 90 new members.
So if I become a member,
Mm-hmm.
is it a year thing? So if I started in February, my dues are due the next February? That kind
Absolutely. Yep. It's 12 months from the time you join, regardless of when you join.
Keep that in mind, folks, because some places, it's calendar year.
Yeah. No, we do it from the day you join.
I like that.
We do too.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. All sorts of terrific events. We should get you on every month here
We'd love that.
in your 90th anniversary.
That'd be great. That would be great.
We'll get together and set up some dates. How's that?
Perfect.
I will pop on out to the museum, send you an email. Somehow we'll get it put together.
We'd love to have you.
Thanks, Susan.
You bet.
Appreciate it very much. Susan Garwood. By the way, those old Schimmel pianos were made right in this building.
I know. Very cool.
In the basement, they still they have some remnants of a